we're very fortunate to be joined at the moment by two actually practicing campaign strategists. People who've worked at the coalface and know the ins and outs of the world of Republican and Democratic politics. So we've got Noam Neusner and Penny Lee. Penny comes from the Democratic side. She has worked with luminaries such as Harry Reid. And Noam has come from previously the George W. Bush White House and been on the Jeb Bush campaign. We're going to just talk a little bit about the world of the 2016 presidential election. Is this the wildest election that you've ever seen?
Yes, it is. It's crazy. I mean, we have a reality show star is now the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. He has he's very steadily knocked out a handful of very strong people who were considered very strong presidential quality candidates, and they're all gone, including unfortunately the guy I worked for. Hillary Clinton was always viewed as the leading candidate on the Democratic side. She's found herself tied up in a bruising match, although she'll probably win it, against a 74-year-old.
He's old.
He's
old. We get it.
Socialist with bad haircuts and bad suits, and
exquisitely socialist.
And exquisitely socialist, if you want to, if that works for you. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and he's a senator from a state. It doesn't really have a natural place in the country's imagination. Nobody thinks of Vermont as being a place of great import.
Butter and cheese, though, isn't it?
Ice cream,
Bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast.
I believe it is bed and breakfast.
And maple leaves.
Okay,
Don't forget the maple syrup.
But
Beautiful
it's
leaves.
not the industrial dominant heartland of the country.
It's not Michigan.
Nope.
Yeah, and it probably has a population of about 5 people, but we don't know. But
So, look, I'm going to ask the question about this is the thing that's coming up in the press a lot lately, and that is, does this presidential election really hinge on the decision of the FBI to indict Hillary Clinton or not?
Interesting.
That's interesting. Well, the answer is that if the FBI does not indict, that merely keeps the election going. It certainly makes it a lot easier for Hillary Clinton to win. If they do indict, then it throws everything into quite a mess. I mean, I don't know what the Democrats do if Hillary Clinton is indicted.
But indictment isn't if you could clarify,
Sure.
Penny, indictment isn't guilt. It's just a grand jury says.
It does not legally.
No one wants a murder trial against them.
No. It's not, whoa, we're going
What I'm saying, in general,
Will, easy, Will.
Stay
on topic.
It's only a criminal indictment, not a murder indictment.
And an indictment in our world is just that there needs to be another step. It is not proven guilt. It just means that the investigation and the possible trial will go forth. So, legally, it does not preclude her from being a candidate. Optically, politically, it puts a very, very strong. But I will say, don't forget, in a different kind of a way, her husband was impeached by the United States Congress, but he had, he was able to turn the Congress during the time in which he was impeached because he flipped it into a very political ploy.
Turn the Congress? Like,
he worked with. What he did was he elected more Democrats during that time, and he actually left with a higher approval rating. He was able to he was not a political suicide. It's a much different. It's a little apples and oranges.
It's about to explode.
But look, it's not a legal. It's not a legal preclusion. It's let's say it's not a gold star next to your name. No.
So let's look at it that way.
She has enough challenges as it is. Let alone throwing an indictment on top of that.
If she's indicted, she's over.
Yes.
And the reason why is actually because she's not already in office. The Democratic Party would be an act of extreme. I don't even know what it would be an act of, but it would be incredible for the Democratic Party not to immediately just say to Bernie Sanders, "All right, you're our candidate."
But the analogy here, once you're in the House, the race is about
different.
building that fragile
different.
house of cards or whatever
Right,
it is.
it's
And
different.
very fragile.
Yeah.
You know, holding all
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah, and
Takes a
in,
much
and in
smaller
an
box
election
to
in which being an outsider, being not part of the establishment, not being on the take is was sort of one of the key things. That, Trump would kill her on that stuff. So.
Yeah, but so I just want to
Go
ask
on.
about this being the outsider. You know, it seems such a dominant theme of this election that, yes, Clinton looks like she's going to get into the Democratic nomination and probably have an okay campaign after that. But Bernie has given such a run for her money, and at the same time, at the other side, Donald Trump. That there is such a strong voice for the outsider right now. Is this an aberration, or is this just it's always there? It just happens to be a bit bigger.
If you look at the last 5 elections, we have switched parties, control of parties in the last 4 of the last 5. So either we switched parties in the House, or we started in the Senate, or we switched parties in the White House. So we have been on a little bit of a change the party, throw the bums out kind of bend for a while. So this is not, what they're doing is bringing rise at the presidential level again. The first thing you always do when you announce yourself for president, especially, is I'm not from Washington. That's the first thing you say. Almost as part of your speech is I'm running because I'm not X, Y, or Z. So that is it's typically normal. But it is definitely interesting. I mean, Mrs. Clinton can't run away from that. Her last name is Clinton. She is married to a former president. We haven't even discussed what it would be like for potentially the first spouse, what those roles would be. But that's a whole
We
other
had that in
subject.
Australia. We just called him the first bloke.
Ah, perfect.
So maybe you'd like to try that.
Sure, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
I like that. That's
Give it a go.
Give it a go.
Bloke.
So look, given that Donald Trump has indicated over at least the previous 2 presidential elections that I'm going to run, and everyone goes, yeah. When it actually comes to the time, he never puts the form, never declares financially and everything. But he has been doing some strategic moves in the last 18 months of who he's been meeting with, where he's been turning up, who he's going to turn up to for a different fixture. How come the GOP did not see this coming?
I don't know, no. How was that?
It's not a matter of the Republican Party not seeing him coming. It's just not taking him seriously. And I don't know what meetings you're talking about, but he's basically been running a one-man campaign for the entire time, and he hasn't built a campaign machinery that includes a base of donors and significant policy advisors and things like that you'd see in a conventional campaign. That has been his strength.
Yep.
The fact is, what we didn't see coming as a party or as a party establishment is the level of sort of dislike that a lot of Republican-leaning voters have for elected Republican leaders. We just did not, honestly, I don't think that Hillary Clinton saw how much, she was disliked by Democratic voters. I mean, it's a very common theme that you're seeing in both party bases, and it's something that really can play havoc in the election that's coming in November.
Can I just ask, having worked in a campaign of this year within Jeb's campaign, where was the moment where you thought, hang on, this guy, the guy that everyone had predicted was going to be, in conversations previously, Penny, you mentioned that there was the moment where Donald Trump insults John McCain's war record. Everyone thought, okay, that's it. He's got to be done here. But then there's plenty of other things that he said
Mexican
that people
rapists.
that one. Or,
And Megyn Kelly is
Megyn
bleeding.
Kelly's got
And
bleeding out
so
of
many
the
times
womb.
people
Yeah.
say, okay, that's got to be it. When was the moment when inside the Jeb Bush campaign that it was like, really, this guy? But just realizing, okay, he's unstoppable.
You're mentioning all the moments that I remember those conversations, and time again, we thought that our focus needed to be on candidates who presented as legitimate candidates. Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, John Kasich. We always kept our eye on those guys, and what we expected was at a certain point that Trump would flame out. That this moment that he was enjoying, whatever moment it was, it would pass as soon as voters got serious and started focusing on the fact that we needed to elect an actually electable candidate to be our candidate. It never happened. And the thing is, we kept knocking each other out. The other candidates kept knocking each other out, which I know had a huge impact on Trump's ability to sail through. But don't forget, throughout the campaign, there were always people who went up against Trump. I mean, Rick Perry went up against Trump early. He didn't land a punch. I mean, there were points in the debates where Jeb actually has very strong debates. You know, he really went after Trump, and he was the only one to do it because everybody else was lying back, waiting
for someone else to do it.
But the fact that you actually frontally attack Trump is interesting. It doesn't actually change the dynamic. The dynamic is Trump is the outsider's candidate. He's the guy who represents the cultural heart of America. He's the only one who's taking a position that's really strongly anti-immigrant, strong and anti-trade. He's got, if you're selling, 8 different types of pizza, you don't want to be selling the kind of pizza that everybody else is selling. You want to sell the kind of pizza that only certain people like. And it's the Hawaiian pizza with the ham and the pineapple. Like most people, actually a lot of people apparently like it. But let's say the Hawaiian pizza with the chicken and the green peppers too. It's like only certain people like it. Well, guess what? That's what Donald Trump was doing. And he was selling that pizza over and over again. And while we were all fighting about over the other voters, he was just adding more and more supporters. And look, there's a lot of people who are going to ask a lot of questions about why we didn't catch this guy, why we didn't stop this guy. The fact of the matter is, you have to deal first of all with the fact that he was the right guy at the right moment. And you have to tip your hat to him because he figured it out.
Yeah, and I think the other person who figured it out was Martin O'Malley, who we are giving a big prize to in the podcast for. Well, look, he got in there. He's established a name. He's just, this is our theory, my theory. Okay, we're moving away from it at the moment. But we've been talking about, on the podcast, business candidates. The ones who run because they can then go on the speaking tour. Former presidential candidate.
Newt Gingrich being one. Yep.
All of that sort of thing. And that's kind of, Ben Carson is another. Ben Carson's actually been dead for 3 years. But it's just that kind of thing that I find very interesting. But what I'd like to ask you about, Penny, is Emily's List.
Yes.
Emily's List standing for early money is like yeast.
Correct.
It helps raise the dough.
It's like Emily.
No, there's no Emily. There's no Emily.
You are such a
it's a woman thing.
I know.
It's a woman thing.
Such a male.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have Emily's List.
I did not even know that, by the way.
We have Emily's List in Australia. It's strongly associated with the Australian Labor Party.
Oh, fantastic.
How does it work with the Democratic Party?
Yeah.
Because there are certain factions in the Australian Labor Party which will not associate with Emily's List because of its pro-choice stance.
All right.
Is that something that comes into play in a Democratic Party in the US?
And it's not an official part of the party, so they are.
It's not here either.
Yeah, it's a group outside, and they only support women pro-choice Democratic candidates.
Right.
So that's it. So if you're not part of that, even sometimes they get themselves, entering into a race with a very pro-choice male in a Democratic primary. We just saw this in Maryland happen.
Right.
They supported a woman named Donna Edwards, and actually the winner was a Chris Hollins, who was a current congressman, and he is incredibly good and has probably, if he could be rated, had an A+ rating with Emily's List on their issues or pro-choice or reproductive right issues. So it does sometimes get a little sticky and a little bit messy, but they do operate outside the party, and they are very narrow in their focus and who they support.
And they are supporters of Secretary Clinton?
Yes, big time.
Big time.
Big
I
time.
thought she was very strongly associated
Yes,
with them.
very strongly associated. They were out front. They have been out front very much so about putting a woman in the White House, and she has been strongly supported by them for many, many years.
How much are they in terms of what's their annual spend in an election cycle?
It just depends. I haven't looked at their
10 million.
Yeah, I mean it's upwards of, if I remember correctly, it's upwards around 30 million or not more. And especially with a women candidate for president with a legitimate chance, I think it'll even increase it even more.
And I'd like to ask you a question too, Noam. I understand you're from a mixed marriage in that your wife is a Democratic,
That's right. Yes, that's true.
Oh,
She is.
And how does that work at breakfast?
There's a lot of grumbling by me at the newspaper.
So what are you going to say on Mother's Day? Mother's Day is Sunday, and you'll be back in the States. What will you be giving your wife?
It's that's a good question.
Maybe the Hillary's women's card?
You'll want to you want to be you want to remember that that there's bigger things in life than politics, and you want to try to just take the high road at all times, and that's I think what a good marriage does, and truthfully it's really not a major issue. I try to steer clear of certain issues which I know are particularly sensitive ones.
But that's not unusual for any marriage. I don't think it has to be politics.
Yeah. I was going to say, make sure you stop by the duty-free shop on the way out.
On the way out. Bernie Sanders isn't actually a member of the Democratic Party.
He is now.
He is now?
He is now.
Right. This is what I wasn't understanding.
Yep.
Because he was an independent that usually voted with the Democratic
And it's also
Party.
a big difference in Australia. You'd never get to run like the leadership of a political party without being members of
you'd have to be
board.
blooded for several elections. Like you'd have to lose. And
Maybe we should look at that.
We're not endorsing it as a way to go. So when he raises money now, it will go to other.
That's really been a bone of contention
I
within
find
the
this
party.
Interesting.
Because he has not.
That's right.
To date, he has refused to raise money on behalf of other Democrats. He has
You mean
refused.
like if someone's putting money on his website, he won't send any other.
What you have to do, it's a little bit. There's a legal.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a legal.
legal apparatus that has to do, and that is mean you have to work with the party, the Democratic Party, and form a joint victory committee so that people can give, because you can give actually more to that campaign.
Of course.
The committee right now you only can give $2,700 to one candidate. When you
$2,700, how ironic.
Yeah,
it's like $27.
It's 100.
it actually it actually increases every year based on inflation. So that's why right now
I love when people pro-rata stuff.
Exactly. So right now it's at $2,700, but if you form a joint committee, you can raise upwards of $340,000, and portions of that go into the into the Democratic Party to help the state parties build their apparatus and build the structure that needs to do to be able to deliver a Democrat, plus down ballot races as well. So he has refused to form a joint committee. He has refused to engage with the Democratic Party in that sense. He just feels like that's not part of his message. That's not part of his movement. It takes away from who he is.
So he's still actually a little bit running against the Democratic Party?
Yes, and that has really been a bone of contention.
Yeah.
But he's also criticising Secretary Clinton in his email and his campaign.
Because he could raise money off of that.
Because he can raise money off it, but he's criticising her for saying the money she is raising, only 1% of it, he says only 1% of it is actually going to other campaigns. Now, I don't know the
But the irony about it is there's money that she is raising for the party that goes into account that she cannot touch, she has no control about, that actually is if he was to become the nominee, he uses. So the money that she is raising is actually he could actually have access to, which is just so ironic.
I've been given the wind up, and I've got two questions. One is the question. One is the question that we do need to ask of anyone who is visiting and is about beer. But we'll come to that in a second. But the other one is about demographics.
Yeah.
The Obama elections, and I'll keep it short. The Obama elections have shown. Have ridden a wave of America changing. America becoming more ethnically diverse, younger, having more single women, more urban, I think, is one of the dominant ones. All of which are more democratically voting people. Does this mean that the Democrats have a lock on the presidency ongoing, or where is the path back to the mainstream as America transitions away from the middle of the Republican Party?
Demography is generally regarded as destiny in American politics, and I think what we're seeing right now is for sure the Democrats are enjoying a natural advantage with young voters, with single females, with non-whites. They are drawing, and they're drawing not only from these voters' natural constituencies, but also they're highlighting issues that matter to those constituencies, and it's to their credit. Plus, the Republicans are putting up, candidates that don't necessarily, but could theoretically appeal to these same constituencies. It's up to the Republican Party to turn that around. Some of that's going to be by virtue of circumstances. I mean, keep in mind that millennial voters were all either basically not living or effectively not really paying attention to things when 9/11 occurred.
Of course.
9/11 was an event which
15 years ago.
tilted the nation very significantly to greater concerns about terrorism, greater concerns about national security, which tended to play well for Republicans, and it certainly carried Republicans for at least 2 election cycles. So, what I'm not saying that I wish that would happen, but truthfully, something's going to happen that will wake up millennials a little bit to other things that are part of being, American. The other thing too is the economic experience. Right now, millennials are really on a generational cohort basis, really struggling. I mean, they are starting businesses at much lower rates than prior generations. They're saving they're struggling to save because they're struggling to work. They are carrying huge amounts of debt from college. They're experiencing levels of economic uncertainty that their older brothers or their older cousins or their parents did not experience in their mid to late 20s. We all it's part of life, but the truth is that we get past it. Millennials are not getting past it. They're struggling to buy homes. They're struggling to do lots of things that people start doing in their 20s and 30s. And so the question will be is whether Republicans can somehow create an agenda that is a real agenda that's coherent. It's not just about tax cuts. It's about something that is bigger than that and actually really appeals to millennials, that says, hey, you know what, we have some answers to problems that you have. And if they can do that, and they can sort of take the edge off of some of the identity politics issues, the gay marriage issue is a very big thing for millennials. If you're opposed to gay marriage, it's like you're dead to them. You really have a hard time appealing to millennials in that regard. Truthfully, I mean, that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take almost, in certain cases, it's going to take a massive change from the Republican Party. But the stuff is there, and in a properly functioning political system, especially with two majority parties, that's how it plays. They play to 50-50, and Republicans will not stay at 45 forever. That's the thing. They'll move back up to 50. They'll figure it out. And, hopefully I'll be part of that process. We'll see how that works out.
I know we got to wrap up, but I'll just say really quickly, until the Republican Party addresses immigration policies in a reform-minded way that encourages and allows for all immigrants to feel welcomed into this country, they will continue to struggle demographically in winning back the White House.
So the other important thing we have to talk to you about is, number one, do you have barbecues and cake stalls on election day? You have sausage sizzles at the election booth, at the polling booth?
It's in November, so it's a little bit chilly.
Doesn't matter.
So
you're a bit soft.
We have one at school halls.
We're still soft,
We get a sausage outside.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great. I'm all for it. I think this is a tradition.
I think this is something we should take back.
Just run by, because they're in schools. The school PNC is like, we can raise money here.
That's
So
smart.
please take that back.
We'll take that back.
That's a great idea.
That one we'll take back.
That's a winner.
And the other thing we need to talk to you about is what beers have you discovered while you're in Australia?
Thank you for mentioning that. Beer is one of my favorite subjects, more so than politics, and I have tried to sample a number of your local beers. I'm having right now a Victoria Bitter.
Which is known in Australia as a VB.
A VB.
Gotta go say it real faster.
VB.
VB, that's
VB,
it.
I got it. Yeah, it's a classic apparently. It's a
standard.
It's a standard. I got it. All right, so I've had that. I've had the Matilda Bay, which is terrific. I had a Fat Yak Pale Ale earlier today, which is a great name and is a very strong beer. Had a Kosciuszko, the Mount Kosciuszko. That was a good one. Yeah. Well, I have a soft spot for Polish patriots.
So you actually pronounce it correctly.
Yeah,
I'm so impressed.
That's true. Yeah, Australia's got these were all good beers, very strong beers.
What do you have tonight?
The VB is
the VB is a cleanser between other.
It's a solid beer. I mean, somebody said it's a working man's beer. It seems like a beer that you'd have after mowing the lawn, or maybe like taking out the garbage.
Their ads.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a working man's beer. It's a beer that you'd want to have when you want to have more than one, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And Penny, what have you? Are you a beer drinker?
I'm not a beer drinker, so Naomi has taken that mantle. But I have really enjoyed the Australian wines, mainly in the white, the Sauvignon Blancs, and they have been absolutely delicious. And I'm off to Perth, and so I'm looking forward to sampling many more.
Some Margaret River wines. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us on G'day Patriots. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your stay in Australia. Thank you very much for sharing your stories with us.
Yes.
And the rest of this election. May the road rise with you.
And good day to you both.
Thank you much. All right.